First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Well, everyone, this is Fox 12 Now, and again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate everybody who's tuning in, whether that's watching live or after the fact. I'm Greg Nibbler here in the Fox 12 Oregon studio, and right now we are going to be talking about Dungeness crabs. If you are familiar with the Pacific Northwest fishing industry, I mean, just crabs in general, this is certainly a staple element of not only something that is in a bunch of dining rooms and something that people eat, but also something that's very important to the economy as well for the Pacific Northwest and the entire West Coast, really. And there's been some delays on the commercial side for Dungeness crab for this year. We're going to talk about that, why those delays are happening, what that means, how that changes, and all of that with our guest right now. We've got Justin Ainsworth from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife who's with us. And thanks very much for joining us here today to talk about this. You know, I'm somebody like everybody in the Northwest. I, of course, have gone out to get some crabs before myself. You know, I've gone to Nehalem and done all that. But then also, this is something that's so important for the commercial side. So, Justin, I wonder if we could start off, if you wouldn't mind, you know, just letting us know a little bit about your role there and how the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife fits into all of this.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for having me. The Oregon Dungeness crab season is scheduled to start every year on December 1st. But before we can do that, we work with the industry and the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission to make sure the crabs are ready for harvest and of the highest quality. So partnering with various vessels up and down the coast, we do some quality testing. And what that means is we have very prescribed process for doing a test fishery, and we capture crabs out of each port, and we weigh all of those crabs working with local processors. And after the crabs are weighed on the dock, they're processed like they normally would, cooked, and then the resulting meat, that will give like a meat fill percentage, and we have established criteria up and down the coast for the meat fill. And also, we also do testing to make sure there's not biotoxins there, so we have a safe product for the consumers. And ODFW is responsible for all the regulations around the fishery, and my role is to look at the test results, make sure we're able to open, work with our other the states of California and Washington, get input from advisors in the commercial crabbing industry, and help set a start date and get the season underway.
And that's a lot that you all do right there, just that part alone. When it comes to, you know, some of these crabs that you're measuring and weighing, what are some of the issues or I guess factors that could make them come into a smaller amount of meat when it's all done?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a tough one to answer. But we do see variation between years. In some years, the crab, hit the minimum criteria early and are ready to go. Other years, it takes a lot longer for the crab to be filled out with meat. And it's a factor of a number of things. Large male crabs that are available for the fishery, legal in the fishery, they mate or they molt just around once a year. And the timing of that molt, whether it's in the spring or later in the summer, the timing of that molt and the food availability, amongst other factors, would determine whether or not the crab are ready to go when we start doing our testing in November.
Gotcha. So that timing from them, and are there environmental factors that could cause that timing to be different?
Likely there are, yeah, and that's where it gets really difficult. Most of the information that we have about that molt, so a crab, when it molts, it loses the entire exoskeleton, and then the only way it can grow is through the molting process, and that, like I said, it happens once a year. And the only information we really have is looking at crabs throughout the season, from that are caught in the fishery. And if anyone out there has done any crabbing, either recreationally or commercially, they know that certain times of year the crab are really soft. That is a crab that has just molted, and likely the meat fill recovery percentage is really low on those soft crab. So December, the crab are usually ready to go, and this year they were at December 1st.
Yeah, I mean that would be those again. Those would be the softer crabs. Now, when you, which certainly I've encountered some of those myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now that makes a lot more sense as far as what that is. Now, when for right now for this year, I guess there's been a couple of delays. It seems like, and I could be wrong on that. Could you walk us through, what some of those have been?
Sure. So our initial test fishery that I just described in November, where our test fishing boats went out of each port and the crab were processed, and that meat recovery percentage was met the minimum criteria. So the crab were ready to go. And this is where our state fishery is part of a West Coast fishery. And so over the past several decades, we have something that is called the Tri-State Protocol or Tri-State Agreement. And so we work with Washington and we work with California, and we also work with our advisors. And because this year crab in southern Washington did not meet that minimum criteria, they needed to delay and not open. And our advisors really did not want us to put a line right at the Columbia River where that would be closed north of that line, but then open on the Oregon side of the river. And they also gave us a lot of input. Our advisors did that a delay from December 1st to December 16th would be the best thing for the industry and for the market. And so that's why we had that first delay coastwide. And then we evaluated again and had another meeting with more advisors. And there was a lot of interest in getting the fishery going as we could. And so we came to the decision to open up most of the state, almost 90% of it from Cape Falcon near Manzanita south. And so that will be opening December 16th. And we'll be delaying north of Cape Falcon so that we can align it with Washington, so that area around the Columbia River can open all at the same time.
Is there any specific factors that you could think of between Washington and Oregon, that could be that much difference to cause that kind of delay?
Well, we do know that Dungeness crab range all the way from California all the way up through Washington and Canada and up to Alaska, and they just have different timing of that molt when the males molt. And so I would probably characterize that the crab that we're seeing in southern Washington, they may have molted later in the year, and so those crab have not filled out as well as the crab in Oregon have filled out.
Gotcha. So just as simple as that, it could just be just that later time of year then.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, what kind of an effect does this have on the crabbing industry as a whole when we have these delays, 2 weeks to a month or possibly even more?
Mm-hmm. Really kind of depends on who you talk to. The crab, once they enter the market, once they're sold to processors and buyers up and down the coast, they go into multiple different markets. They could be live crab that you see at the store, whether on the coast or around the state, but there are also live crab that are sent overseas. And in addition to that live crab market, there's also a market where crab are cooked by the processors and frozen for later and distributed out to markets. And then also, meat can be picked out, and so it's sold, just in tubs or even just sections of crab can be sold. So there is a diverse markets for the crab. And each year, those are going to all those different market sectors. And so it's hard to say exactly what impacts a 2-week delay or multiple week delay would have on those markets. We do know that a lot of buyers want to have crab available in time for Christmas and New Year's, and so that's a big one. The other important markets are, some of the crab are sent to Asian countries, and so getting crab available for the Chinese New Year is also a factor. So there's a lot of different factors about the how these delays may impact, where and how much the crab are sold for, and how much the fishermen are getting for the crab.
Yeah. So okay. So a lot of different factors there could go into that.
Hmm.
Does this delay and the fact that it is taking a little bit longer here this year cause any kind of concern for a long-term issue when it comes to Dungeness crab, or a changing of the season even for them in the Pacific Northwest?
Absolutely not. The Dungeness crab fishery is regulated by the size, and so we don't allow any harvest until they're 6¼ inches, and so that allows the crab to already go through a season or two of being able to contribute to mating and reproduction in the fishery, and only the males are harvested, so all females are protected. And then the season, it limits the amount of time the fishery is open. We have caps on the number of vessels and the number of pots they can use. So it's a very sustainable fishery. So we have no concerns that any kind of delay or even changes in when the season starts, not going to have an impact on the overall crab population.
Gotcha. And this isn't something where this would extend the season potentially on the other end, would it?
The season end date is fixed, and we don't change that every year. We do have a pattern that every season in the first few weeks or few months of the season is where the bulk of the crab are caught. So any kind of delays would just push back that pulse and that peak of the crab fishery landings. But once we reach into the springtime, the fishery slows down, and we have fewer vessels participating.
Gotcha. And when it comes to those vessels, and sorry, just the last couple more questions here, just because I think it's very fascinating to learn about this. When it comes to the vessels and the regulation side of things, is there a certain limited number of people who can go out there for the commercial crabbing side of things?
Right. Yeah. The fishery, it's a limited entry fishery is what we call it. So anyone who's participating in the ocean commercial Dungeness crab fishery needs to have a commercial Dungeness crab permit amongst other licenses. And there are a limited number of commercial Dungeness crab permits. Right now, there's about 320 or so that are active. And so anyone who wants to get into the fishery would need to purchase one of those permits. And so that's a way we limit the amount of vessels that operate in the fishery. And furthermore, each one of those permits only is allowed to use a fixed number of pots, whether that be 200 pots on the lower end or 500 pots on the higher end.
When it comes to those pots, and I'm just bringing this up because I just thought about this being in the news recently, associated with the humpback whale near Yachats, and supposedly tangled up in a crab pot. How does the regulation work for those commercial crab pots that are out there that may end up getting left there?
Sure. Yeah, that was a really unfortunate and sad event. And the Dungeness crab fishery has worked together with us to try to address the issue. And there are a few regulations that we've put in place already to reduce the interaction and try to reduce the amount of overlap where, from what we know about whale migrations off Oregon. And so I mentioned the pot limits that all of the vessels are operating under. We make even further reductions later in the year after May so that fewer pots are out in the ocean. We also put a depth restriction at that same time, so it reduces the overlap of the fishery with whale distribution. So, trying to reduce the amount of whale entanglements. Unfortunately, we still see a few. They're very, very rare, but we try to do our best to reduce the amount of whale entanglements. And so we're working with the industry and with our Fish and Wildlife Commission to address this further, and maybe come up with new measures that would able to reduce the risk of entanglements even more.
All right. Well, Justin, thank you very much, for being here with us today. Is there anything else that you think is important just to get out there for everybody about commercial Dungeness crab fishing and the industry here in the Northwest?
Yeah. I think your viewers here in Oregon know it's an iconic fishery and very important to the state, and especially important to the Oregon coast and the coastal communities. Last season brought in nearly $100 million worth of revenue directly to the fishermen, and that translates to even more economic input into the coastal community. To multiply that by 2 or 3 times in terms of jobs in the processing facilities, restaurants, tourism, all that stuff. So super important, and I'm really happy to be working with the Dungeness crab industry to try to maximize those economic revenues, but also address really important issues like whale entanglements.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and the opportunity to have this longer conversation like this. And yeah, thanks for being here on Fox 12 Now.
All right. Thank you very much for the invite.
And for everybody watching, again, this is Fox 12 Now. We're live streaming, and as you can tell, we get to have these longer form, more in-depth conversations, ask more questions, and really appreciate it when people like Justin join us here for something like that. We're going to take a break. We'll be back here in just a little bit. We're going to be talking about an underwater volcano coming up at 2:30 p.m. So if you're watching live, that's when I'll be back. If you're on YouTube, you'll see this video, and if you're on the Fox 12 Oregon apps, we will continue on there. So I will talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.